The Rebel Capitalist Show. Let's get into some of the more macro and investing topics. Prior to hitting the record button, we were talking about coal and we were talking about copper, some of these commodities that I know a lot of my viewers and listeners are interested in. So you've done some deep dives here. What has been the conclusion of your analysis?
It's a fascinating time, George, because with this global warming summit in Glasgow, and we wrote a piece on coking coal, actually, which is not coal, and it's titled "Coking Coal Has a Branding Problem."
Okay.
And we were treated to quite the spectacle on the first morning of this gathering when the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was being interviewed on the BBC. I can't say that I would call it an interview. He was being berated by the BBC climate editor for having the audacity to not object to a quote unquote new coal mine. And this line of attack, we have this attack on fossil fuel supplies in the Western world, which is not replicated in places like Russia and China, and they're just stepping into the void and making lots of money as we shoot ourselves in the foot here. But the thing about that piece, which is so hysterical and horrifying at the same time, is they got into an argument about coal, and Boris Johnson was defending himself by pointing out to how little coal is used in the UK power grid, but neither of them seem to realize that the coal mine, at issue is actually a coking coal mine, and coking coal is not used to make electricity; it's used to make steel.
So
And
metallurgic coal.
yeah, met coal,
Okay.
and you can't make windmills without steel, and you can't make all manner, or you can't make electric vehicles without steel. And today, Britain imports its coking coal, and there's these large, dry goods cargo ships that float around the oceans and burn lots of fuel and pollute the oceans. And the steel mills in the UK are reliant on these imports from places like Australia and Canada. And other big coking coal producers include obviously China, which is a very big coking coal producer, and Russia. And so it's an entire discussion around quote unquote coal, where neither of the people involved or most of the audience watching have any idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, right. They
And
have no
so
idea how it's produced. They think the fair, like the electricity ferry, just
it's,
comes in and waves a magic wand, or
but,
the windmill ferry, and poof, there it is. It just
but
appears out of nowhere.
it's not even, I mean, it's not even coal. Like, they're arguing about coal as a source of power, when in reality, you can't make steel today. I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration. You can recycle steel in an arc furnace, and there are some research projects on trying to make steel from things like hydrogen, but instead of coking coal. But by and large, you need coking coal to make steel. The windmill, the wind turbine towers are made of steel. The electric cars are made of steel. There's no path to radically reduced carbon emissions that doesn't go right through steel. But that mine is never going to get permitted after that fiasco on the BBC. I mean, let's be clear. We are going to attack supply. Prices are going to skyrocket. And these decisions are being made by people that have no idea where stuff comes from. And that was really the point of the piece. I'm not pro coal. I think we should be actively replacing coal plants with natural gas where we can. I think we're very pro nuclear over at Doomberg, but you can't be anti coking coal and be pro economy,
Right.
because you need steel to run the economy, and there's just no two ways about it. And so, as a consequence of the prime minister having no idea what he's talking about, being berated by the BBC climate editor who has no idea what he's talking about, we're going to do a really stupid thing. And that's fine. We've come to we're at peace with this. This is just the way the world is going. And how do we put ourselves and our clients in the position to, hedge themselves or invest in the way that the world is going? But it's just so ridiculous that we had to write
So
about it.
how should the investor interpret that? What are the takeaways for the investor? I know my good buddy, hedge fund manager Chris McIntosh, in some private conversations, he's told me, he says, George, I think that the cure for high prices is no longer high prices, in the sense that yes, usually in a free market, you would have supply come online that would bring the prices back down to an equilibrium. But now he says we might not get that because of this whole ESG movement and people just being completely out of their minds and not being able to do a cost benefit analysis. So you have no more supply coming online, was his point.
It's not even a cost benefit analysis. It's a complete and total aversion to thoughtful bridging solutions to the place everybody wants to go, which is an economy that is far less polluting and far less CO2 intense. And there's pathways to do that intelligently that don't involve starving tens of millions of people, because let's be clear, energy is life, George. We wrote a piece called Why Are Cows Sacred, where, energy is life, and there's just no circumventing that. And the people least able to afford, they're right on the line, are going to be the first casualties of this insanity.
And explain that, because energy
Yeah.
prices go up, and it's a larger portion of the lower incomes demographic, a larger portion of their paycheck.
Yeah, I saw Alex Epstein being interviewed on a British news channel. He's sort of a very larger than life figure in the "this is all crazy" space. We're nowhere near him in that sort of in that way. But he quoted something which stuck with me. I don't know if it's true, but he said there's something like 3 billion people on the planet whose annual electricity use or energy use is less than the amount a fridge would use in an American home over the course of a year. And that really drives home, there's this amazing phenomenon of, as economies emerge, their intensity as it pertains to their use of fossil fuels skyrockets as the GDP per capita grows through certain levels. And there's huge swaths of the planet that are just entering that now. And so the oil squeeze is really more about demand, accelerated by our attempts to crimp supply. But because energy is life, the price elasticity of demand for these materials is highly, highly inelastic, as we're finding out. Like, I could tell you today, I have my Bloomberg open as I'm talking to you. Natural gas today in the US is $5.85, but natural gas for delivery in Asia is $31 a million BTU, and natural gas for delivery in Europe is $27 per million BTU. On an oil equivalent basis, that's almost $200 a barrel oil already. And these are LNG, liquefied natural gas. But people have no idea, like, energy is life, and we can pay that. So George Gammon, if the price of gasoline goes to $10 a gallon, you're still going to fill your tank.
Right.
But for a large portion of the planet, $10 a gallon gasoline, or the conditions that lead to that, means starvation. We wrote a piece that is our most read piece, maybe 55,000 reads, called Starvation Diet, where we're all sitting around at cocktail parties, taking bricks from the bottom to put them on top. And eventually the Jenga tower is going to collapse, but we're not going to feel it. Larry Fink at BlackRock's not going to feel it. But if you're right on that edge, that $2,000 to $10,000 GDP per capita, and you're growing and emerging, there's no path for them to join sort of the emerged economies without massive increase. And I don't know if you saw recently, but BP came out and said that the demand for oil had crossed 100 million barrels a day again, which is higher than pre-COVID, and supply is down. And as you said, it's not that that the cure for high prices is no longer the cure for high prices. You just can't do it anymore. Like, permitting is they shut down the Keystone Pipeline. We have a neighbor to the north that has an enormous amount of energy to be sold. But even in Canada, Trudeau was at the conference saying that they've committed to stop all of this. And I don't know that people think through the consequences of this. Like, there are smart ways to do this, and we seem to be choosing all the dumb ones. And that's kind of what we write about. We're all for, we laid out our policy in a piece called America's Energy Strategy is Bonkers. And we just said, go full speed nuclear, go full speed replacing coal with natural gas, go full speed on plug-in hybrids so that you can optimize fuel abated per pound of battery, because the batteries have to come from mines, and those mines have environmental consequences and need diesel fuel and tires and all the things that come with it. And of course, build out renewables, but also have a huge Manhattan-style project on storage as well, so that we can take these intermittent powers and stabilize them and stabilize the grid. So we're just at a crazy time. It's very frustrating to watch the British Prime Minister and the BBC climate editor argue over about a coal mine and not even know what the coal mine does. It's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I see so much of that insanity in the markets today, and not just with energy, but with meme stocks, with crypto. It just seems like the entire world is kind of losing their mind. You know,
Yeah. Well,
uh,
to answer your original question, what is the investment thesis? I mean,
yeah,
if this goes the way you and I worry it might go, I'm not even sure I think it might go, because you hope that people come to their senses. You're going to see sort of a gamma squeeze on these fundamental commodities like you'd never believe. Like we wrote a piece called "Oil to 300" with a question mark.
mm,
Um, if you just take oil to its all-time high as expressed in ounces of gold, if you and I think that's real money, then just getting to the all-time high they already saw not that many years ago would in today's dollars, because the price of gold is appreciated or the US dollar has depreciated, as you and I would say it, $300 is sort of table stakes for just getting to the all-time high. And already we see the administration, who's very, one of their first acts was to kill the Keystone Pipeline. They're begging OPEC to produce more. What kind of policy is that? And so if you just take the logical consequences of our stated policy, which is crimp supply in the Western world and beg OPEC to produce more, we're going to give share to OPEC. And one of the analysis I saw, I wish I could remember the guy who said it, but when OPEC gets controlling market share, that's when you see these giga spikes in oil, because they're price optimizers, and so when they can set the market price, they jam it.
yeah,
And we're the logical conclusion of our stated policy, which is oppose everything we can on the home front and beg OPEC to pump more. Is OPEC's going to have more market share, and with more market share comes pricing power. And these people don't like us, and energy is life. So we are ceding control over our lives to people that don't like us. And it's clear as day to see. We're screaming about it. We're a free blog on Substack, and we can see it. We wrote a piece called Putin's Fools Rush In. Who holds all the trump cards in Europe today? Vladimir Putin. Who gave him those trump cards? We did. He could shut the gas down tomorrow to Europe, and that's that. It's his gas. He's not obligated to sell it to us. We have no alternatives. We must buy from him. What's the clearing price when energy is life and you have no choice but to buy? And so it's just, we're going to learn this lesson the hard way. There will be a revolt. There will be a mass starvation event. The price of fertilizer has skyrocketed to all-time highs. That's going to translate into higher food prices. That's going to feed inflation. There's a hard way for us to learn these lessons. There's an easy way to see them. And yet here we are, we got to go through it. And it's just, it's frustrating, but we have the outlet. It's fun to write. But at the same time, it is amazing to watch.